It's nice and early in the morning here, August 1st, 2022, and I'm out in the field down the way from where Sasha and I live, where we are working with a whole bunch of potatoes. I want to talk about those. I want to talk about how we followed up our garlic crop, what our hopes were, and then how reality interfered with those hopes and how we're navigating that, dealing with some dry pressures in the late season here, and some other minor updates, so stick around. The first quick note is that 100% of our garlic has been harvested. It has been curing in our garage. We did a final count of the seed that we're going to be offering, and in the next few days should be updating that on the website. We should have around 400 or 500 pounds of really nice quality seed to offer, so excited to do that. Keep an eye out for that update. The beds that the garlic was growing in, so this was a bed. These stalks here are elephant garlic. It's a minor exception as we left them wherever they had flowers so that we can collect actual real seed, so they need a little bit more time. But there are a number of beds in here where there's empty gaps. When the garlic came out, we realized that the soil was just so bone dry and rain was not forthcoming in this landscape. And so we tried seeding, and the Sudan grasses that we did in one or two of the beds seemed to take, even though it was so dry. All those grasses coming up are Sudan grass as a cover crop, but more or less all of the parsnips, all the oats, all of the kale did not work. And so rather than lugging water down here over and over again, we just covered the beds as deeply as possible with hay. It takes quite a bit of mulch to cover a field at this scale. We're at the 1/8 acre and 1/4 acre garden size scale here. And so recently I was scouring on our local Craigslist and I found a guy. It was like a 20-minute drive. These round bales of hay got too wet for him to feed cows, so he was selling them for $10 a piece. Our neighbor has a dump truck, which is pretty awesome once in a while to lean into that technology. And we picked up 8 of them. So far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 of them have been spread into this field, and we're leaving this one as a reserve with a little fun cap, a little showy cap for the fall when we need it. This one is queued up to roll down the northern edge of the field on the outside of these crops and mulch that end. And as long as they're wrapped and they're on their edge like that, or on their side, I should say, I'm able to roll them on my own, but it's much, much nicer with other folks. But round bales for $10 a piece, probably just about the best deal, the best leverage of money and time for soil building, weed suppression, water retention, all the different things in one stroke. And this end of the field is just slightly upslope. This is the east side of the west side, so gravity can help this huge wheel unfurl down the lane as needed. Some of these beds have been mulched extremely liberally. Like this one is probably a foot thick of mulch. And the idea was, because there was nothing going on in this bed, this was garlic and we weren't seeding this at all, we could go extremely deep on this bed, 100% weed suppression, I'm sure, and water retention for the fall. And then when we lift these rooted elderberry and rooted black currants and nursery stock and larger elderberry, there's hay right nearby that's a short commute to finish mulching those, so we can do that in the fall. And these beds will probably be left alone for the fall. Maybe we'll put cuttings in. More likely than not, this will just rest like this, have the entire winter to absorb a huge amount of moisture, and then we'll plant either transplants directly in, large seeds, or cuttings in the spring. This has become committed to a no-till garden space now. There will not be metal tools getting down into the soil at this point, so that feels like a nice relief for the soil and for our backs. You can see one of the spots here just to show what bare soil looks like this time of year in a dry year. This was a bed that was in soft neck. Our attempt was to seed it to oats. I did not end up covering this with hay because I do see a few seedlings of oats. There's a possibility here the dew will help the rest of these get what they need. There's no water on this site, so we'd have to, hike it in from our place or pull it up from a creek. So either it takes on its own or it doesn't. I also see some amaranth coming up in between, so we're leaving this open just in case. But if we finished our garlic harvest and just left the field it would be looking like that, which is not very considerate to what this soil has offered, which is exquisitely beautiful garlic and so much other production. So the easiest stroke is cover it in hay and come back another day, wait for rain. It's cool to see this little row of trees. This was all hardneck. I talked about this recently in a video, the idea of growing garlic along with tree seeds. And now that the harvest has been completed, you can really see that pattern. There's the 3 rows of garlic that were here. This is a row of hazelnut, a row or 2 of garlic, spotty row of chestnuts and English walnuts. I think the voles did find these. And then there were 2 more garlics. And now, in an ideal world with good moisture, this would have been sown to beans or some fall crop to fill it out, but mulch is fine. But you can really see how well that system worked. All planted on the same day, we end up with however many more hazelnuts. Sparse on the left, but my gosh, that is an abundant 120-foot row of baby hazelnuts. There's probably upwards to 1,000 in here, at least many hundreds, all co-planted with garlic, defended by garlic, and then filling out the space for the rest of the season, and so tolerant of dry. Really proud of these little baby friends. A 2nd-year seedling river locust, or Morpha fruticosa. That's what we dug up for fall and spring shipping. I think these are going to be too big for us to ship. We'll find some smaller ones that will fit in boxes by the end of the season, but these may get 4 or 5 feet tall. So locally, we might be offering huge bundles of these 2nd-year seedlings. And it's lovely to see Illinois bundleflower getting ready to make some flowers, and we'll be able to actually save seed. These have been hard to keep up with. They're so fine and small that in a field context like this, the weeds really run through. But we just snip the weeds, lay them down, and put hay around, and they seem to be doing just fine. And this block of senna looks stunning. Nice bunch of flowers on there, great flow of nectar for the honeybees and the bumblebees, and then we'll be able to collect seed from this as well. Excited to be able to offer. Gotta figure out a head count of how many plants are in here. But you can see there's lots and lots of stalks, and same deal, we're not disturbing the soil, we're just cutting herbaceous, weedy competition, using it as a mulch, and then mulching on top of that. And that is the flow for a dry year for sure. Always build up, try not to dig down. For a dry season, for very, very little rain, probably 1.5 inches of precipitation over the last 8 weeks or so, this potato field is doing really nicely. We had some folks help a few times, coming out with some shovel work and hilling them. And then we've been hand weeding, spot and hand weeding throughout. I don't think the potato development really needs us to pull, you know, a lamb's quarter here or there, or a smart weed here or there. But the idea is that if we can be on top of all of the plants growing in the potato beds, get them out of there, that when the potatoes are harvested, it can transition directly into a fall crop or a completely weed-free seed bed for garlic, which just makes our life easier in the future. So that weeding now translates into a much easier time later. The edge treatment of this garlic field is finally starting to really take off. These are golden giant amaranth. These are plants that I have been saving seed since 2016. Really productive grain amaranth, and slowly thinning in between. I think now we'll do a final thinning of a plant every 8 to 12 inches or so. And then there's Waltham butternut squash on the very edge, and they'll be trained back along the edge. We'll mulch around them, keep it mowed, and then let them sprawl when it's time to make their final crop. But really beautiful boundary here that's growing pretty quickly now of amaranth and squash cooperating on the south side of this garden space. Amaranth, very, very deeply, soundly tolerant of a dry year, especially with mulch. And I think the squash, having that buffering of the amaranth nearby, will help them thrive and produce a crop too. That's the update for now. I'm gonna dig some potatoes and share a shot of how the new potatoes are looking. We'd like to have a few for eating for a little bit, and we will share notes on when we're ready to do a more thorough harvest in here. I'm gonna guess some new potatoes. We can probably do a third or a quarter of this field as new potatoes in the next 2 weeks, but the main crop for winter storage will probably be end of August to mid-September, depending. So we'll let folks know. People have expressed interest in coming out to help volunteer with the harvest and the distribution. The idea would be nothing in here is for sale. It's to be harvested and shared with folks. We'll share more notes when we get there. But that's the potato field doing its thing, the garlic field doing its thing, and the lack of ability to flip the garlic beds into fall production beds, but at least they're getting protected. Tiny side note is I forgot to mention this idea of the 30-pound monofilament fishing line run at a few inches above ground and again roughly 3 feet seem to have kept the deer out of this field for the whole season. Now that things are winding down, we can probably take this out of commission just so it's easier for us to come in and out, but we'll wait till we're ready to do some real harvesting. But that was nice to see the browse starting to really increase in here, and then that solution under $10 or $15, under 20 minutes, half an hour to put in, has worked for most of the season. One random plant dug up of the potatoes, and that's a yield from one of them. Really beautiful new potatoes. These skins are very, very thin. They will not be for storage. This will be for fresh eating. I'll dig up one more plant and just see, but really nice little sample there.